You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and an awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decide to Transform with executive contributor and my very good friend, GP Walsh, who joins me every month here on the show, and it's my pleasure to welcome him here again. GP is a master spiritual teacher and meditator in many different spiritual and healing modalities, including non-dual self-inquiry. And GP, I'm excited to have you join me here today. Welcome.
Hey, Tomas, good to be here. As always, I look forward to this, our day in the month.
Yes, I do too. And guys, we've been doing this for about 6 months, and I invite you to go back and listen to all of our conversations here. They're all archived here on the show. We've talked about a lot. From geopolitics to spirituality and everything in between. And GP, I'd like to keep it on the spiritual theme to start out here. People see you online. You've got quite a presence and a following on YouTube with satsang and on your website. And I have always been curious. So I'd like to ask you, people see this version of you showing up, and what does your daily spiritual practice look like?
Well, I'm certainly not a model anymore as to what anybody should follow. Spiritual practice is something that morphs over time. Mm-hmm. It's not meant supposed to be static. The practice that's required from a beginner is not the same as a practice that would be practiced by somebody who's experienced or mastered something. At a certain point, it becomes more about curiosity and exploration than about, mastering a particular technique or something like that. So for me, it's a very spontaneous thing. I'll find myself just kind of inquiring or meditating at the most inopportune times. I'll just notice. Remember, for me, meditation is simply watching things happen as they are, without any kind of an agenda to change it. Now, that's a way of being. That's something that you can be that way all the time. You can get to the point where you are literally aware of everything that's going on, actively engaged, and at the same time, there's a part of you that is kind of sitting back and watching, that doesn't have a vested interest in what the outcome is. And even though I'll be doing something and I want to get a result from it, I mean, it's not like it's not completely neutral on a very human relative level. There's this other dimension that I've cultivated over many, many years, which is totally neutral. It's totally equanimous, has no concern whatsoever, isn't rooting for one side or another in any discussion. Now, how does one get there is the question, because obviously I didn't start there. Right. None of us start out equanimous. We start out quite vigorously arguing for our position.
Oh yeah, no.
And
yes,
and in that state of mind, it can influence meditation. Meditation then. When most people start doing a meditation practice, it is very goal-oriented. Mm-hmm. They're after something, right? And meditation has really been morphed, and I think kind of distorted by the way it has been picked up and practiced in the West. in that it becomes about ROI, right? it's
Oh
about
yeah, yeah,
it's about what am I going to get out of it? And there's health benefits, reduces stress, and the like. There's moral benefits. It will make you more compassionate, slower to anger, which are really the great qualities to look for. And as a spiritual teacher and students, those are the qualities I look for.
hmm,
Not necessarily about the stress, that happens automatically, but are you kinder? Are you more thoughtful? Are you slower to anger? Do things not bother you as much? Are you more compassionate? Do you listen better? Are you more present in your relationships and in conversations? To me, that's the sign of spiritual growth. It isn't about angels singing and seeing colors
yeah.
and all of that. It's about the effect it has on the character of every individual. Now, the way that's attained, though, is um, uh, first. Let me clarify what the mistake is. And the mistake is that somehow those wonderful qualities of compassion and empathy and presence and all of that are like a particular set of behaviors that you learn, like you put on the costume, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now I've earned my I've earned my brown belt, my black belt or something, right? Now I've earned my orange robe. Now I can
Yeah.
sit in the front with my orange robe on,
Oh yes.
and the next level I'll get to grow the big beard or something
Mhm.
like that, right? The signs of the anointing. Um, they're all byproducts of the actual practice of meditation. And the actual practice of meditation is a simple watching without um, without having a preference for what you're watching. It is self awareness, self witnessing without an agenda. I often call it the yoga of allowing
Mhm.
because it's a and yoga, which is another thing that's been completely completely distorted in
Oh
the
man.
West. It's
Yeah.
I mean, good God, it's
Uh-huh.
like acrobatic yoga, power yoga,
Mhm.
um, uh, hot yoga, chicken and goat
Yes.
yoga.
Yes, with your expensive yoga clothing.
Oh my God, yes, yes,
It's a
yeah.
must.
Saint Lululemon, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, so it becomes about the fashion and all of that.
Yeah.
It gets reduced to exercise,
Mhm.
like meditation gets reduced to stress relief. Whereas the reality of yoga is it was a preparation for a deepening of meditation. That's what it was about. It was about learning how to be fully present in your own body. That's why traditional hatha yoga, you take a pose and you stay there for a while. It's not like the vinyasa flow. I can't find any place that teaches hatha yoga around here anymore. I can't find a yoga studio. They're
Oh.
all vinyasa and
Mm.
power yoga and things like that. Um, which is, I guess, it's fine for exercise, but it's not. It isn't conducive to meditation, right? Whereas the
Yeah.
original yoga, that was its whole purpose.
Mm.
Hatha yoga is one of 8 paths of yoga, right?
Right, right.
um, which includes meditation, Raja Yoga and Seva Yoga and Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, a bunch of different kinds. That's the only one that concerns itself with your physical posture.
Mhm.
And so when you get into an asana or a posture, you you hold that posture, and so all of your attention it comes inward. You don't have time to be thinking about a lot of stuff, right? You're trying to stay in this one position and you think you got it. And then the teacher comes by and says, no, no, lower your shoulders, right? You'll find some part of is bent out of shape or something's not quite right. But after a while, if you keep doing it, it all begins to harmonize. And as it does, you feel the power of that particular position and what it does to the internal energy and the organs, the whole effect that it has. So it's an appropriate metaphor when I talk about the yoga of allowing, because it's very hard for people to meditate without commentary.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not
It's,
talking about just, I'm going to try to stop my mind now, because, trying to stop your mind, Muji said it, trying to stop your mind is like trying to stop the wind dressed as a kite.
mhm,
It's not going to happen. Um, and that itself is the mind. It's a thought. I want to stop my mind is a thought, right? So the real mission is to simply become a very expert observer or witness to what's
mhm.
happening inside. You become, if you just uh, go into a meditative position, and I don't care whether position is right. Um, I, I I simply recommend don't lay down, because there's a
Yeah.
tendency to fall asleep.
Mm.
So
Oh, yeah.
sit up. I can't. I've never been able to get into that lotus position, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, sure.
so
Well,
so fortunately, it's not required.
this is true. Yes.
Very fortunately, because
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to do anything if that was required. Um, and then you simply watch. You simply watch what you're feeling, and you'll notice that if you just quiet yourself for a minute, you can start by just breathing, focusing your attention in the body, um, and then just watch the feelings as they run through your body. Notice that they're not static, that they're constantly in motion, and that the mind is constantly wanting to comment about it.
Mhm. Right.
Now, normally we're not, when we're not aware of that, we're so engaged with our mind and identified with it that we take those comments for our own. We don't realize that that too is something that we can actually observe. And in that process of pure observation, you fall into this place that I like to call the peacemaker. You're not you're not taking sides. You're not arguing for a position. You're not trying to make one thing right and another thing wrong, which is often what happens, especially in self-help and especially since the advent of the secret and the law of attraction. People are scared to death if they're, oh my God, it's a negative thought. Oh, whoa. um, and but if you're just there with in complete equanimity, it's just whatever's there happens to be there, and nothing is a problem unless you say it is. So if you decide it isn't, then it isn't. Um, Suddenly, a completely different energy, internal energy, begins to happen. And little by little, it becomes much easier to sit in that place of allowing. And in that place, I have found is the place of wisdom. That's the place where you start seeing things as they are, not through the prejudice of your beliefs or assumptions or old habits or what you were taught. You actually see things as they are. It becomes very easy to dismiss thoughts that are obviously not useful, right? Critical, judgmental, hateful,
Mhm.
bigoted, all of the things that that many people struggle with, and we struggle with as a culture. They You begin to realize that the entire patterns of thought are conditioned programs. None of them are you. None of them are
Yeah.
original to you.
Right.
And, and in that realization, you get power over them. You no longer have to participate. And that is so empowering, to recognize that you are aware of these things. You're not immediately you being drawn in to the drama.
Mhm.
This is a freedom by which you can choose. I don't want to get drawn into that drama. And the beautiful thing is, without your attention, no thought pattern can survive. Right? You're the outlet. It has to plug into you. If it doesn't grab your attention, um, then it will eventually. I don't care how extreme the thought pattern is or how long it's bothered you, it will disappear, because it has no energy of its own. It absolutely relies on you. Nisargadatta put it beautifully. He says, you don't have to stop your thoughts, just lose interest in them.
Mhm.
Simple as that. It becomes like a radio playing in another room. Yeah,
Right.
you're aware it's there, but so what? What
Mhm.
what effect does that have? And and this is where I start people. And this is not a beginner process. This is a practice. And like yoga, you can do it your whole life, or music, you do it your whole life, or many different skills are practices, right?
Mhm.
It's the kind of thing that just goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I found that it's a prerequisite for most people, especially in the West, where we don't have any kind of monastic or the same kind of spiritual traditions that they would have in India or in the Zen traditions and things like that.
Yeah, right.
Um, in the West, where we're much more cerebral, that it's an absolute essential before somebody can step into the capacity to do the kind of non-dual inquiry that I do. First, you have to establish a harmonious relationship with yourself. When you stop fighting yourself, you suddenly have access to areas of yourself that have been hidden. And not only is it opens up the door for that, but this is also, by the way, the cure for traumas.
Okay.
It's highly therapeutic because traumas are simply all this stuff that's buried underneath that we can't get to. And we can't get to because of all the just layers and layers of assumptions and beliefs and ideas and thoughts and patterns and the like. And as you begin to go through those, back down closer and closer to the original, the you that was there before all the conditioning took place, um, you'll find all sorts of things falling away, all sorts of problems. And, there's, and there's, there's overwhelming evidence, statistical evidence of the relationship between trauma and physical illness. I was listening to Gabor Mate, who's a medical doctor who talks about this, and he says, I'm just dumbfounded. He was just report after report of the relationship between childhood trauma and physical illness. I mean, including things like cancer, and I mean, all of them, with the exception of like a broken bone, right? Some of the structural ones, not, but every single other one. It is the leading factor. And he says at the same time, there is not one single course still being taught in any of the medical colleges or universities, even the big ones like Harvard, not one course or even a lecture on childhood trauma.
Okay. Wow.
It's just completely ignored, right? It's an ideology that it's ignored. And then, people like Bruce Lipton or something who talk about, mind-body relationship, or Dr. John Sarno, who wrote the book, the mind-body continuum or something. I can't remember exactly what it was called. They're kind of regarded as peripheral out there, right? And yet the evidence is like, I mean, it's overwhelming.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's overwhelming. It's statistically accurate. It conform. I mean, these studies are printed in the New England Journal of Medicine, the Harvard Journal of Medicine. I mean, we're not talking about, it's not in Crystal's magazine, right?
It's not.
No,
right.
or Yoga Today or something.
Yeah.
It's not in any of those. It's in the legitimate. These are legitimate statistical studies that are simply being ignored, and it's interesting because Gabor Mate, who I really admire, his process he calls compassionate inquiry.
Okay.
And it is just this kind of an inquiry into ourselves that allows us to really, once you've established an inner place of allowing, where you have a harmonious and a loving relationship towards yourself, you're now in a position to very compassionately allow all the real bad shit to start coming up.
Right? Yeah.
The tough stuff, the stuff we don't want to face,
Right.
Those memories that we've blotted out of our mind of abuse and neglect and diminishment, and all of the stuff that created all of our adult problems, right? And I will be unequivocal about it, all of them.
Right. Oh yeah.
All come from there. So I know this started out with my practice, right? But this is what I've learned over the last 50 years. I started out, my butt on a cushion in trying to hold that position. I had like 5 cushions because my legs didn't do that. So,
right on. All right. Yeah.
And just sitting there trying to do it in that way. I practiced I practice metaphysical healing and affirmative prayer, and things like that. All the disciplines of that kind. But it took me a while before I realized that the essential ingredient was this relationship between yourself and your own inner world. That all of the traumas had created what I call a soul disconnect.
Okay. Hmm.
The real you, the original innocent you, when it expresses itself in an environment, and that environment is hostile towards it, and everybody's environment is hostile towards who they are to some degree. Some it's horrible, some it's just a
For
downright
sure.
abuse.
Oh yeah.
Others it's milder, but nobody gets through childhood unscathed. Nobody's allowed to completely be themselves. We have to conform to whoever our tribe is. Um, and in that process, we have the essential conflict between our need for attachment, our need for bonding with parents and that sort of thing, because our lives depend on them, right? You're well into double digits in years before you can possibly survive on your own as a human being.
Oh
We're
yeah.
not like horses that are running around and eating that afternoon, right? After they've been born in the morning.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
We take years, decades to
Yeah.
actually get to the point of self-sufficiency. And so this is something that's systematically going on and on. So there's that need for bonding or parental attachment. At the same time, the other need that is really unique in human beings is authenticity, to be yourself, self-expression.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yes.
these are the things that get in conflict. And if there's a conflict between survival, which depends on the tribe, and your self-expression, guess who wins, right?
Yeah.
You end up all the qualities that are you but are not acceptable. That's all the stuff that goes down into the basement where you don't have access to it. And that disconnect that sends it down to the basement is the essential trauma.
Hmm.
That is what trauma is. You have been disconnected from your own true nature. And the nervous system, in the most brilliant and clever, I mean, just utterly clever, in order to keep you safe, it not only buries you down in the basement, it creates a false version of you to present to the environment.
Yes.
This is the birth spiritually of what's called the separate self. Psychologically, it's the ego. It's the sense of identity you had to become in order to be able to survive. If you hadn't, you'd either be dead or you'd be nuts. And as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned, people in mental institutions need gurus,
Mm.
not psychiatrists.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, and this is something that you teach. So for the listeners that are not familiar with GP's work, this is a large part of the basis of GP of your signature course, Inner Reconciliation.
Yeah,
And yeah, this is so fascinating. It really is truly fascinating. And as far
it is.
as I mean,
It is.
it really
It's
is.
totally absorbing. It's like, wow, this is fun.
It is fun, and for the listeners, if you have had experiences of reconciling or beginning to reconcile your own self-expression with all of the values and programs of the tribe, you'll know that it's very interesting indeed.
very, very interesting indeed. And if you've even gotten to the point where you realize that there's a disconnect between you and the tribe, and that there may be more to this sense of discomfort and or feeling like a phony, right? Or getting to a point in your life and going, I
Yeah.
hate my life. How did I get here?
Mm.
Even that is a good sign. It's not a happy sign. you know,
No, right.
it's kind of like, road closed ahead.
Yes.
Not the sign you want to see, but nonetheless, it is portentous. It's auspicious.
It
It
is.
is, these are angelic visitors going, you're 2 quarts low, Jack. It's an idiot light on the dashboard.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and that discomfort is, I see it more and more. As a matter of fact, I would say that the majority of my students have come to me because they hit that discomfort and couldn't run away from it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. At some point, the discomfort becomes so enormous that one then has to
Yes.
look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. You run out of moves.
yes, right. You've tried everything and nothing has
Yes.
worked.
Nothing has
Then
worked.
what do you do? Yeah.
Now what?
Mhm. Yeah, and this is something that's I mean, again, it's so multifaceted for a lot of people because these conditioned responses are so ingrained. Now, question for you: at what point did you become aware, if you remember, that you had that disconnect between your own programs, your own tribal identity, and your self-expression was there, and it was a real thing? At what point did you become aware of that conflict?
um, that's interesting because I was aware of it, but didn't understand it.
Mm,
You
mhm,
know,
mhm.
I started on this path a long time ago, long before self-help existed.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
right.
before Course in Miracles was written,
Sure.
let alone anybody knew about it.
Right.
Nobody had heard of Deepak Chopra or Wayne Dyer, any of
Mhm.
these people. And I'm trying to sort this all out. And I didn't even I didn't have a language to articulate it. I never heard the word conditioning.
Okay, right.
Right now,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a household word, but the only people who use those kinds of words are PhDs in psychology, psychologists, or universities somewhere. It wasn't in the normal mainstream lexicon.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so I just had so at first I just kind of took all these things as flaws to be overcome, right? As these problems and that I had in habits and these kinds of things that that somehow I had to figure out a way to get rid of them, to transcend them, or to fix them, or anything, because I had the essential idea that there was something wrong that needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
And I went through many different traditions and different both spiritual, metaphysical, psychological, emotional, all sorts of different ways of approaching it. And it was probably in the late 90s or middle 90s, I ran into Advaita Vedanta through Nisargadatta,
Okay.
which gave me a completely different perspective on things. And then Zen. Uh, right around the same time, I ran into Zen Buddhism and started looking into both of these teachings, which really blew my mind. Um, but it was a while before I connected the dots. Um, and
Okay.
and the actual experience that connected all the dots for me um, was actually quite comical. It's about, I don't know, 2005. Um, and I had worked with inner energies. Like I'd worked with archetypes. I'd worked with,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
um, mythology. There was a time I was doing men's work. It was the time of the mythopoetic, Robert Bly
Yeah.
and Sam Keen and that sort of stuff, which was really interesting and really fun. But I also had some experience with like voice dialogue and some other kinds of things that were looking, differently. There's the aware of sub personalities and stuff like that. But there was still this unspoken law that somehow these were things you had to get rid of or fix in some way, right? Even though I was even beginning to see that the demons talked about in mythology were actually me.
Yeah.
And we could do a whole show of that. It's just so much fun to talk about.
Mhm.
But at any rate, I was at this place and I'd made up my mind that I no longer wanted to do anything other than teach this, right? But over the
Okay.
course of the years, while I've always been teaching this and counseling people, I've also done music, I've done voiceovers, I started businesses. I had to provide for two sons I was raising,
Right.
I learned how to do computers. I did computer systems. I was a
Mhm.
consultant for a while.
Yeah.
Um, so it was, I did everything I had to do, but I thought, okay, it's time. I don't want to do anything else but this now, right?
Okay.
Because this
Yes.
is where my passion, this is my heart's always been.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
There was a while where I was like, do I want a composer or this? Composer or this? Because I still write music. I was writing a piece just before we started
Okay.
today.
Wow.
I just kind
Wonderful.
of got inspired this morning. Anyway, but I'm not getting anywhere. I'm utterly stuck. Right.
Okay.
Everything I tried to do to try to make the transition, nothing worked. Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A few things here and there, but it was just completely and totally flat. It was just, there was this wall. And I had, this is, 35 years after I started down this path. So I had a lot of tools in the toolbox, right?
Oh, you bet. Most definitely.
I tried them all.
Oh, yeah.
And they all failed. I said, okay, now what the hell do I do? Right. Okay. I give up. And one day I literally did. I was just looking, I go, I haven't got a clue. I have not got a clue. And I just kind of sat back, my hands in my lap. I was sitting at my desk, looking out the window. Just closed my eyes for a second and go, I give up. And all of a sudden, this image popped into my head. I found myself sitting at a big conference table. And all around the conference table were Secret Service agents.
Oh, okay.
Little guys, the sunglasses.
Yeah, you bet.
Little curly earpiece, coming down, the black suits and the black tie, and I looking around. What? Okay, this is interesting. And I look to my right, and just his face, just inches away from me, is another one of the Secret Service agents. Right? He looked like Smith, right, from the movie The Matrix, right?
All right, sure.
He was obviously in charge, right? And he's like right here, right? And I went, I look and I go, who are you? And there's no answer, right? I said, okay, well, it's not a who, it's me. I mean, this is all in my. Okay. Okay, so why are you here? And he said, to protect you. I said, to protect me from what? From everything. What? For everything. There's danger everywhere. I was just, okay. Protect me from everything. But what about, nope, can't chance it. Too dangerous. He's just adamant, just absolutely unmoving. And I thought, okay, but I would really, you're the worst. We have to protect. We have to protect you from you, everybody else from you, and you from everybody else. I went, okay, that doesn't leave me much room. As I mentioned before, by this time I had some experience working with archetypes and stuff, and I realized that I was having, in a very real way, a conversation with a part of myself, namely the defense mechanism. I was literally talking to the reptilian stem, right?
Sure.
That only cared about survival. Right? And I said, oh, okay, I get it. So you have to protect me, right? Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And me, I'm the worst. Oh, you're the worst. All right. Okay. Would it be possible for you to protect me, but outside? I mean, it's really hard to do anything with you right here in my face, right? But so could you like maybe outside the office, and then if something goes wrong, you can run in and save the day and take over and, stick me back in the closet, whatever you need to do. This look comes over his face. He's thinking, all right, but we're right outside. Right?
No, of course.
Of course. And boom, all of a sudden it was like I was back in my office, and it was like this weight had just come off my shoulders. I was like, it was probably within a month. I'd started a podcast. I had 25,000 downloads a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, it just all of a sudden, the way had started to open. Some new contacts had come, and in a relatively short time, this is what I was doing full time. And I thought, well, how fascinating by all of that. It's almost comical when you think about it. But that was what opened up the door. I realized that I had created an antagonistic relationship towards my own inner energies,
Right.
that I was never going to get the protective mechanism to go away. And I wouldn't want it to. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
That would be kind of silly. Um, I mean, if it's nothing but the protective mechanism, you're basically an ant, right? There's no authenticity. But if it isn't there, you'll have a very dramatic life, but it won't last very long, right?
Mm. Oh yeah.
You'll just implode. So there has to be, and this was the key I learned from Zen, this flow, right? It was never in
Yeah.
any one position. It was always moving. And that was the realization that completely shifted my relationship with, I didn't need to get rid of anything. I needed to reconcile with these energies, that the safety mechanism wasn't going to stop trying to keep me safe, but I could engage it in such a way that it would find a different way to do it that would also allow me that freedom of self-expression and authenticity.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that in that moment, inner reconciliation was born. It's
Okay.
a reconciling. It's not self-help. It's not
No.
personal development. It's not self-fixing in any way, because there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
You've simply created an antagonistic relationship with yourself. That's the soul disconnect. That you are down in the basement, right? And and the one you think you are, you're trying to improve.
Yeah.
You're giving medicine
Yes.
to a ghost, basically.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And that describes pretty much almost everything that we do in the world is trying to feed the ghost and clothe it and tuck it in for bed and things. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It was such a revelation. And in that moment, just everything I knew just converged
Mm.
into this place, right? And it was like,
Wow.
oh,
Yeah.
wow. I mean, the way I taught meditation changed.
I can imagine.
The
Yeah.
way I worked with people, coaching them. I just started trying out little questions with somebody. I'd be, okay, they're feeling a resistance. Like, yeah, you know what? Ask the resistance. What are you protecting me from?
Hmm.
And they were stunned. They got an answer.
Oh yeah. Oh
This
yeah.
answer just pops up out of nowhere,
Hmm.
you know. And sometimes, I mean, some of the things that have come have been so strange, Tomas. I mean, I don't teach things like past life regression and that sort of stuff,
Hmm.
but I just ask the energy what's going on, because it knows,
Oh, for
and
sure.
it reveals stuff. I mean, just okay. I accept whatever you say. And there's some
Yeah.
things that come up that are clearly they are not traumas of this life.
Yes. Right.
They're carryovers,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's evident in the energy itself, right? So I don't go looking for any of this stuff, but when you create that kind of inner environment of cooperation and safety for the whole energy system, it reveals whatever it needs to reveal, and doesn't reveal what it doesn't need to reveal. So there's no abreaction. There's no reliving the trauma, right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, I've been to seminars, for dealing with trauma, and they were more traumatic than the original trauma.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah,
I can
it,
about
it,
imagine. Hmm.
yes. Um, so it was just so gentle and so kind and so interesting and so humorous.
Yeah. Well, it's like your defense mechanism said, there's danger everywhere. So you
Yes,
never know what form that danger's going to take.
exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If your world, imagine yourself, you are the reptilian stem.
Okay.
You are the protective mechanism.
Mhm.
That's your only job.
Right.
For you, there is danger everywhere,
Hmm.
because you're not interested in fun.
No, no.
You're not interested in having a good time. You're not interested in growing and evolving, right? You're not interested in romance, cueing the violins. You're only interested in survival. And so when you see it in those terms, you don't need to try to force it to be anything else. And in that process, by simply allowing it to be what it is, it begins to respond to that energy because now it doesn't have to defend itself against you. Is it
Yes.
right? It has to worry about the whole world, and of course, it's got to worry about you too, as Smith said. Oh, you're the worst.
Right. Yes. Now, what happens in your experience when someone begins to drop those defenses to all of these experiences?
Well, remember that the energy of defense and the energy of self-expression are the same energy. When
Okay.
you get a cold, right? Your body just takes all the extra energy away, to fight off the intruder. So
Yeah.
if it needs to, it will lay you flat on your back, right? Fill up every porous in you with all sorts of nasty stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Boogers. Yeah.
Boogers and snot, and you'll have
Yeah.
just all sorts of grumbling and stuff in your body. You have got no energy for creative engagement or
Right.
enthusiasm or anything because the defense needs it, right? That's job one. And
Mm.
I agree with it at that particular time. Yep, take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if it doesn't take it, you're dead,
Then,
right?
yeah.
And that's kind of a moot point in all your growth and all of that, right? so
Mm-hmm.
so I almost lost my place there. So the same thing is true when we get stuck in the defensive posture, which we all have. That's the nature of the soul disconnect, is that the energy is now more on defense because it's always monitoring the environment to keep up the false facade, right?
Yes.
Right. And so a lot of the energy that you need for living your life isn't available. It's over here. So we get older. We want to have more things. We want to grow. We want to evolve. We find all these obstacles in the way. We find we don't have the inner resources to do it. Things just aren't working, and we think there's something wrong with me, or I got to get rid of resistance. All of the stuff that people go through, which I did too.
Sure. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
only if you recognize that, oh, your nervous system just doesn't think it's safe for you to have it. Let's reconcile with the nervous system. Maybe it isn't.
Right.
So let's not leave that out of the picture. So your job is to become neutral, right? And then the defense mechanism can see for itself whether or not it's safe. If it's safe, it goes, cool, have at it. And then all of that energy goes immediately from defensiveness to expressiveness. It just immediately, just like it was for me. All of a sudden, in one moment, all of the energy that had been restricting me now was supporting
Okay. Yeah. That's beautiful that it's instantaneous like
me.
that.
It is
Yeah.
instantaneous. As
Mhm.
soon as it's convinced that the danger has passed. But this is the whole exercise of inner reconciliation, is it's got to see that the danger has passed, right? You can't force it. And the way you do that is that yoga of allowing. You start yourself by becoming safe. You stop judging, you stop criticizing, you let go of your agenda, you just start being present. And that uh, uh, shift in the energy of the environment is immediately detected by your nervous system. It's
Yes.
the most highly adaptive thing in the entire universe. The
Mhm.
tiniest little difference that occurs in the environment, and it's aware of it. Right? And if it's consistent, right, it will begin to adapt to it. It's like water. It will take the shape of whatever container you put it in.
Right.
And that's the nature of our nervous system. But that's the message. That's the job. You've got to let it know the war's over.
Mhm.
And just a great illustration of this I use a lot is that years after World War II ended, scattered throughout the South Pacific Islands, there were still Japanese soldiers fighting who didn't know the war was over.
Right.
Years, 5, 6, 7 years. I heard one even like it was like 1971. That's
Oh,
like 20.
wow.
That's like
Wow.
25 years later, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's just like crazy. And But this is the way it works. And once they found them it took a while to convince them that this wasn't a trick, right? That it really
Right.
was over. They had to come to see it for themselves. They didn't just believe it because you said so.
Of course. Yeah.
And so this is the job. This is the job. Because I cooperated with Smith, I didn't try to force him out of the room.
Yeah.
I asked him if that was possible. Now, if he had said, no, that wasn't, I would have had to accept that. And maybe come back later and we try again, or is there something you can do, right? Is there anything that we can possibly be done? And at that particular time, I'd already done enough work, at least in this direction, that I was ready to actually, be fully present with it.
Sure.
Sometimes, if this is the first time, you may not, it could take some time for you to get to the place of equanimity where you could accept that answer. And if you can, now you're having a real conversation. You're having a real relationship,
Okay.
Because most of the time it's like any relationship, you're talking to somebody, and while they're talking, you're just planning what you're going to say next. You're not really listening.
Okay.
And you can always tell. You can
Mhm.
tell when somebody's doing that to you too, right?
Yes.
It's especially, in an argument, in an intimate relationship, right?
Mhm.
You're just looking for ammo to show them how wrong they
Right.
are.
Yes.
So, and how well does that work in terms of patching up a relationship?
Well, I think as we all know, it's not as well as we think.
No, we want to be listened to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you become a listener to all of the energy within you, you find there are no devils in you. There are no demons. There are no crazy parts. There's nothing that needs to be abandoned or pushed aside. There are no negative thoughts or feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Your inner world actually is unbelievably beautiful and harmonious, and it's functioning perfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's functioning perfectly. And GP, you've said on this show and other shows that we're not broken. That's the real beauty of it, is we come to an understanding of the fact that we're inherently not broken.
We're not. When we understand ourselves, and when you're understanding, I talk about the protective mechanism. This is all you.
Yeah.
It's not like there's somebody else in there that we're right? These are just simply disowned aspects of yourself, the stuff that got sent to the basement. In shamanism, they call it soul fragmentation.
Sure. Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're actually fragmented, but because of the conditioning and the things that happen and the traumatic splits and that sort of thing, it feels as if it's an antagonistic force inside of you.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's you.
Right. It's you. Smith is you, and the expensive suit is also you.
Is also you.
Mm-hmm.
All the gods and goddesses are you. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
You're Yahweh, you're Zeus, you're Aphrodite. You're all of them. I love looking into the myths. I'm a real fan of Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Because it's just that's what they represent. They represent these aspects of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, Jung saw that. He called them the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're aspects of yourself. You are every god and every demon. You're the devil. And you're the angel.
Ah, yes. Okay. Well, I'm glad we threw in the latter part, that we're also the angel. Yeah, because there are plenty of people that think, "Oh, I am the devil." Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, the God within is one of the most heavily disowned self. Oh, that's blasphemy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that too. That divinity is also you. I usually introduce that far into the end, like when I'm teaching about the chakras, because the chakras are another mythological system that represent the same
Right.
things. As a matter of fact, the defense energy is the first chakra, the tribe.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it is. And the sense of authenticity and freedom is the second chakra, which I call the nymph. So they represent these aspects of ourselves that have become splintered. And they become splintered because identified with the person that the nervous system had to create in order to survive, right?
Yeah.
Immediately created a schism between you and all these other
For sure. Oh
guys,
yeah.
right? Because they're a problem now.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
even the angel will appear as a devil, right?
Right.
uh,
Yes.
and so the whole problem is that you've taken this position as this person.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the essence of what I learned in Zen. That is that the moment I regard myself as someone, as this person, I've gotten stuck. And in Sanskrit,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
word for suffering and the word for stuck are the same word. So when I think I am this, then these are my beliefs, these are my ideas, these are my assumptions, these are how I feel about things. Then holding this position becomes wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. Exactly.
And I have, out of thin air, created conflict
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
where there
Right.
isn't any.
Yeah, that describes our entire experience in this world,
It
creating conflict out of thin air.
out of thin air. And
Yeah.
it was just such a gift to finally
Mm,
just find myself on a Zen retreat. Just
mm.
I was gone. The
Yeah.
position was gone. I was absolutely fluid and flowing, and I was nobody. That sounds so strange.
Right. Yeah.
Here we live in a
Yeah.
culture of trying to, I'm going to be
Oh,
somebody, right?
yes.
It's like, I'm nobody. Oh God, what a relief.
Mm, well, and isn't it nice that the solution is something completely different than we're raised to believe in this culture?
Always.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. Well, and GP, what's beautiful is that you are consistently showing up and actively teaching this. And for someone that's listening to this material, for they've never heard of inner reconciliation or the yoga of allowing until now, where would you recommend that someone start in this process?
Oh, gpwalsh.com. I cover a lot of it there. Um, and of course I've got courses on it. There's a course on inner reconciliation. I've created 3 different levels of it um, that they can get. I do training on how to help people facilitate others using this process, even people who've never helped and never coached anybody before, and people who are experienced coaches.
Right.
I've got therapists and PhDs that that have adopted it as part of their practice, because it's not a
Mhm.
technique, it's not a process.
Right.
It doesn't replace anything. It's a perspective. It is just kind of that energy of presence and unconditional love that you bring to whatever you do, and
Yeah.
it's really liberated a lot of therapists and people who work
Mm.
because they have a completely different perspective about it. So it's made them more effective.
Mm.
So yeah, gpwalsh.com is the best place to go to dig stuff up.
Beautiful.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and that has links to get you over to my schoolroom. I call it the Om School.
Yes.
That's got all of the classes on it. I've got stuff on
Mm.
EFT, on the chakras, on inner reconciliation, on meditation, on non-duality. Anything, I got it all. Whatever, you're looking for it, I got
Excellent.
it.
Well, and then for the listeners, this also includes some meditations, the guided meditations, beautiful
Yes.
guided meditations that GP has led, and some of his own musical compositions as well.
Yes, I still do
Mhm.
that. Yeah, I still do
Yeah.
that. I still love to do that.
Yeah, and it's great that that's available also on the site. And it's gpwalsh.com, guys. I can't recommend that to you enough. These courses are very in depth and, well, they work.
They work.
Need we say anything else? They just work. So
They
that,
work. Yes, that's
yeah.
the only thing that really needs to be said. Okay, it's a great theory. It's really good, but does it work? Well, I don't know. No, it
Well,
works. It works in the most practical and gentle
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. And again, and that's gpwalsh.com. GP, this has been really amazing. We always have a wonderful conversation on here, and it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me here again.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tomas.
All right, guys, this has been gpwalsh.com. gpwalsh.com, that's his website. No, this is GP Walsh, not gpwalsh.com, or Smith, or the
Yeah.
guy in the black suit, stylish black suit. Yeah. And guys, this has been Decide to Transform. Thank you so much for joining me here today.